And now, to introduce our guest, we have a Stamps School senior student specializing in visual communications design, creative data visualization, and UI/UX. It is her senior year in her studio course called the Integrative Projects. She is writing and designing a book titled Mutations as a Dialectic, examining technology and how it is transforming the design world through the lens of philosophical and ethical frameworks. Please welcome Ellie Lee.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Christina, for that introduction. Tonight, I had the distinct honor of introducing Eddie Opara, an acclaimed design practitioner and thinker. He is a partner at the internationally recognized design consultancy Pentagram. In his work, he intersects design, technology, and strategy. Originally from England, Eddie Opara studied graphic design at the London College of Printing before attending graduate school at Yale University, where he received his MFA in 1997. He began his career as a designer at ATG and Imaginary Forces and worked as a senior designer/art director at 2x4 before establishing his own studio, the Map Office, in 2005. Mr. Opara joined Pentagram as partner in 2010. His work spans from brand identity, environments, UI/UX, with many of his projects ranging across multiple media, from strategizing for companies to designing for social activism causes. His impressive list of clients include Lululemon, Cooper Hewitt, SF MoMA, Morgan Stanley, and many others. He is also the author of the book Colorworks, which discusses the use of color in design, from its scientific theory to its cultural significance. What I appreciate most about Eddie Opara as a designer is his ability to not only communicate through design, but also to approach it through the lens of critical thinking, deep research, and theoretical perspectives. At times, his work has asked the question, what is design? And at other times, he has explored how design has the power to bind people together. One last thing, Mr. Opara is known for taking off his shoes on stage to make himself feel more comfortable. And I'm not sure if he was planning on doing that tonight, but either way, I would love for us to make him feel comfortable. So please give a big welcome to Eddie Opara. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to take my shoes off. I get to grips with the platform. Good evening. It's really, really, really fantastic to be here. I'm going to start out by saying that I'm a graphic designer. I work on many different things in so many different areas I can sometimes forget. From large and small corporate brand identities, interfaces, and I often work in the arts and humanities, editorial, media, fashion, lifestyle. And I work not extensively in the experiential and innovative areas as well. But I always believe the necessity is a mother of invention, right? And there is the impetus to strive for a new way of creating. But where does it come from? Some graphic design is about solving problems, right? Well, I kind of don't think so, and nor did Milton Glaser. He put it this way, that design is the process of going from an existing condition to a preferred one. My parents immigrated from Nigeria in the 1960s to the United Kingdom to further their education and their opportunities in life. But like many minorities, they found empowerment and progressive pursuits came with being oppressed. This is an image of Enoch Powell. He was a former British MP, Member of Parliament, from 1950 to 1987. He's famous for this speech called The Rivers of Blood. Yes, it is quite a startling term. Well, the title wasn't called Rivers of Blood. It's just that he utilized that particular term in his particular speech. Powell was anti-immigration, and it echoed through the United Kingdom, really epitomizing that sort of atmosphere over decades. Here's a clip.
This country, in 15 or 20 years' time, the black man will have the whip hand over the white man.
And so that's just part of his speech. So what am I getting at? Well, there needs to be a sense of belonging. It's something that's really important, extraordinarily important for everyone, including minorities. And we're sort of here to sort of uphold the strengths and rational differences of what diversity gives you. It's really magic. It should be moving forward, giving you a sense of momentum, and having a contemporary outlook in life. We often live in tumultuous times, troubled times. And as a young boy, I grew up in London during the riots. This is part of the Brixton riots in the 80s. There were 2 of them in that particular location in South London. I grew up in South London, not so far away from this. And it was based upon police brutality and just out-and-out prejudice. Here is me as a 19-year-old boy with hair at design school. And I tried, and I really struggled to sort of define what design was to me, but also what I was, who I was, right? What my design language needed to be. And as I moved over to the United States and did my graduate work at Yale, my thesis was about the multiplicity of self within a digital realm. And that was in 1997. It took me years to pluck up the courage and start projecting who I was and what I was upon the public gaze. Here is a design of me, 6'2", black male, naked, at the Miuccia Prada Miu Miu show. And I was allowed to do this because where I worked, a 2x4 was exceedingly open, and also Miuccia Prada and her group was exceedingly open as well. And I don't believe they sort of realized that I was actually naked in this show. But to me, it was an opening to define who I was and what I wanted to do. And how that idea started to flourish into concepts for Prada while working for 2x4, which is run by Michael Rock, Susan Sellers, and Georgie Stout, who have spoken here before. But the one thing that I wanted to sort of travel back a little bit is I talked about my parents being immigrants. And my father was a pious man. He was a great, great man. He allowed me to actually go to design school. He actually worked a little bit in advertising whilst he was in Great Britain. And he exclaimed in our kitchen to me before I was about to journey to the United States that design is spiritual. It's a way of life. And that's an inspirational edict that one has sort of traveled with me, that I have to unravel and instill in myself for 30 years. And so my faith and my perception as a designer is being tested. Who am I? What do I do? And what do I stand for? Where does one start? Right? We're always in these testing times. We've just come out of the pandemic. There's upheaval in society. Our world is rapidly changing through climate and other conditions. But to be clear about what he stated is that even though he's a pious man, it's really more about not being religious, but being responsible. That the designer's role is to really nurture connections, meanings, and care. In that sense, design is basically an act of social giving, and a very moral one. I believe design is and has the ability to produce the results by being freed from constraints or difficulties through the application of rational thinking, creative skill, and appraisal, acquiring a transformational and progressive outcome. It's not so much about solving a problem. I birthed self-initiated projects that gave me an opportunity to relay who I was and what I'm not. This project is named Stealth. Did it a long time ago. And it's a marriage of two parallel themes on invisibility and visibility of identity. And as you can see, it starts off with a plain sheet with text, and I'll talk about that text momentarily, and it transforms and progresses into a stealth bomber. The dynamic form and function of the stealth fighter provides the dimensional impetus, whilst the text is a homage to Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. It basically says, I am invisible, understand, simply because people refuse to see me. An indication of how black people have been treated in society. Stealth can work as a single piece, but it also can be repeated as a tessellation. And so, through imagination, we can construct a higher efficacy for social development, improving the well-being of black individuals and individuals in total in society, reaching our full potentials, guided by designers. Thus, design has to do more. A project that I worked on, the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's, Ben Cohen, said this: we don't want to be freely using cannabis when people disproportionately black are locked up for doing the same thing. It was partly because of certain drug laws that have been utilized through different states in the United States. One in particular that started in 1973 by Governor Rockefeller. It's really, people call it the Rockefeller drug laws. And these have been pretty bad for black and brown and Hispanic males. This is one of the reasons why there's a massive increase in incarceration in New York and New York City. And during this time that these laws have been empowered, 90% of those men have been black and Hispanic. And so I'm not here to repeal these particular laws because they're mixed up with hard drug laws as well. But when it's about cannabis, it's very important How can they be legalizing cannabis and still have these particular men in prison, incarcerated because of it? It doesn't make any sense, right?
I'm Ben.
Jerry.
Ben.
This is Ben. We learned a lot from Ben. And Ben learned a lot from us. And us meaning myself and my team. He wanted us to really evoke the ideas of expressive responsibility. And so I started looking at it from a different way. How can I look at it from the point of view of a black person and utilizing Trace Seal's typefaces, who is a really amazing young type designer, to do so. His vocal type foundry is absolutely amazing, and he started to produce typefaces from different protests in history. And I felt as though that is a right way to start this project. And the project was actually called Ben's Best Buds. Interesting alliteration. And our mission here, or Ben's mission, was to sell great pot and use the power of the business where 100% of the profits go to the de-incarceration of black males in prison to right the wrongs. And so we also looked at it from the point of view that the type could be even more expressive through the effects and the values and the tastes of the pot themselves. They had different kinds of flavors. But we also wanted to commission different artists to produce pieces with great relevance. And Dana Robinson was an artist that we picked, and she reflected on the following. She reflected on removing traces of exploitative, white-dominated, capitalist visual language and allow the individuals in these images to regain their agency. So, in a sense, don't dress up in a way that you're not. Expose who you are for real. Ben also wanted me to produce illustrations. And I sometimes work in collage as a medium. And in this particular example, this figure is actually wearing orange to signify being incarcerated. But that's not the main aspect. I used flowers symbolizing truth, freedom, forgiveness. And the hair is made of many pieces of purple hyacinth symbolizing sorrow. And how it's applied to the tins, that it is unconventional, it's expressive, it's different from your standard packaging for this particular product. It moves away from the status quo. It really does move away. And so, what have I shown you allows us to start to think in a way where we can leave our confines, our safe confines of our houses and our design studios or art studios, to move through our communities to experience a new land, to migrate our ideals and principles where there are vast communities that need our knowledge, and prophesize the word of design where its spirituality is the guiding light. And I've got to thank my dad for that. And also Ben.
You know, I mean, we were huge long shots. And if you're not going to help long shots succeed, all you're going to get is the status quo.
Good words to remember. But I'm also here to talk about donuts. Yes, donuts. I'm not kidding. Not these kinds of donuts. One's ethical compass within spiritual aspects can be largely visualized by a donut. It's the balance between a positive and social foundation and our ecological ceiling. And you're probably saying, huh? Well, it's because of this. This is a diagram represented by the British economist Kate Raworth, and it's her donut economy. So in a nutshell, Kate demonstrates that our existing methods of looking at our economic outlook are incorrect. That's our way of seeing the world needs to change. That there should be no standing still or turning back. That we should be balanced within that central area, the safe and just space for humanity. That we should never overshoot or have shortfall. There's another donut that we need to know about that places what Kate is demonstrating into effect, and that's the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Does anybody know them? There's a few hands here. These are extraordinarily important to us. These goals tackle the issues that cannot afford to be dismissed, whether it be a shortfall or an overshoot. These are like zero hunger, affordable and clean energy, quality education for all, industrial innovation and infrastructure. Fantastic. These are more than just pretty colors and pretty icons. This is a movement and a philosophy that we, as designers, can get behind and engage with. It allows us not only to look into the future, but be a major participant in shaping a far more innovative one. So think about it. It truly allows us to be us. These types of goals turn responsibility into expressive innovation. Innovation comes from left field. This is Copenhagen by the architects BIG, Bjarke Ingels Group. It's a waste-to-energy power plant that doubles as a reaction space, a recreational space, and a reactional space for skiing and hiking. But what happens at a smaller scale within areas such as graphic design, right? What can we create that is not potentially pretty or gratuitous or superfluous? So I wanted to start this set of case studies, there's 3 in total, with this concept. And it is a derivative of the UN Sustainable Goals. It's called the Living Building Challenge, the LBC. And it's a rigorous green building certificate program that encourages the creation of self-sufficient, regenerative structures. And the LBC is made of 7 key categories. And one of those categories is actually enveloped into the UN Sustainable Goals. It's actually called something different, responsible consumption and production. And our area of this particular project that I'm about to show you was dealing with, focusing on one of those 7 petals. It focused on the materials that are safe for all species through time. In the early 1960s, the location of 237 Moffett Park Drive in Silicon Valley served as a research and development facility hosting what is called the CDC 6600. It's the predecessor to the supercomputer that we have today, right? And this is now the location of Google's cloud headquarters. And what we tried to do on this particular project, which is really more graphic and environmental graphics, was to reference the design of the CD600 within a Moffett Park. And that placemaking sort of demonstrates Google's ability to adapt and innovate while celebrating the powers of computing and the history that paved the way. And so what we did is we started to look at the actual computer, its cathode ray screen, the typography that was reflected at that moment in time, very dot matrix orientated. And we started to sculpt and utilize the LBC material system where we had to locally source non-toxic, reused metals and woods and every material under the sun. It's a very, very complex challenge to produce these particular pieces. And the end results are that this 1960s building was transformed, of course, but also it had these brutalist struts that stood outside the building, so we used those to actually penetrate through for signage to celebrate that. Also on the canopy and how we redesigned that. All the interiors and celebrating that as well, including the G-bikes. There was no sign of Google's overarching brand there. And thus the unconventional and expressive aspects of responsibility were projected, including the reuse of wood in the interior lobby area. The next project really gets into this even more, into the UN Sustainable Goals, utilizing number 3 and number 9. Good healthcare and well-being, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. This project was very special to us. It's called Gush. Gush is a very small but growing Singaporean company, and they're very special. They create paint that cleans the air that you breathe. No kidding, it does it. And so, let me frame this for you. We spend approximately 90% of our time indoors, just like now. When we leave our homes, we huddle in our offices, in our studios, our schools, and our malls, spaces prone to indoor pollutants. VOCs, viruses, bacteria, mold, allergens, chemical particles, you name it, we got it. And there's an increasingly common reason for illnesses and low productivity and reduced individual and communal well-being with these particular issues. And so what we try to do within our work with Gush is speak to not just the surfaces we live with, but the idea of surface mentality, and it pushing the customer, the consumer, to think and go beyond the conventional and the expected, right? And how can we change consumers' minds, committing to truths, changing perceptions of an industry through positioning, messaging, visuals, and packaging, designed by embracing the sense of science. Why is science right now in question? Right? It's absurd and obscene. There's a need to showcase science, not hide it, not to be scared of the facts, right? We live in a more data-driven society than ever before, but without alienating the consumer. We need to understand this area a lot more. How can the community become more responsible for their internal and surroundings, where each dot or particle is recognized as transforming the well-being of themselves and others, instead of it being for one single individual? Well-being is always seen like that. Why is that? You know? It should be shared. It should be communal. Promoting a sense of belonging, social support, shared purpose, creating a positive community and their identity, encouraging collaboration. So in a nutshell, there's a need to promote a more holistic direction to well-being that takes into account the interconnectedness of individuals within a community and the need for collaborative efforts, as I stated before, to promote a healthier and more supportive environment for everyone. And so we built for Gush this idea of the circular loop, the donut, that allows for their products and the community to work hand in hand to achieve a sustainable future. So these are not just particles. This is their community now. But we haven't stopped there. We have to delve into the aspects of the product itself, the paint. And did you know this, that the paint can hasn't changed since it was patented in 1877 by Sherman Williams? Right? It's notorious, well, not their can, but notorious for spillages, right? Who hasn't spilled a paint can before? Right? And this is a challenge that one has to think about, right? There's also the idea that they're really hard to open and close. Again, more spillages will occur. With the help of my partner, Piotr Ronkovich, who's an industrial designer, we started to rethink how to design this piece. Think about the functionality and think about the unconventional, right? The paint has to be unconventional and transformative. The unconventional needs to show its expressive innovation and responsibility at the same time. And we produced this. It doesn't look like a paint can. Doesn't act like a paint can. It opens up, you pour the paint, you roll with the paint onto your wall, and then you breathe nice and easy. All very unconventional, but very functional and very truthful. And so we have to make sure we give these socially responsible companies the arsenal of design instruments that allow them to compete and not let them move backwards. No more status quo. No more. Why would they need to move back to that, to the cliche, the predictable, the common, the traditional, the unoriginal, the trite, the overused, the formulaic? You must have a sense of belief to move forward. Build yourself credos, such as the one that's up here for Gush. My last project really leans into two more of the UN Sustainable Goals. Actually, we brought up good health care and well-being before, but we also wanted to add quality education for all. And so everybody remembers the year 2020. It's actually the year my father passed away as well. But it's the paradigm shift that it gave us, right? It gave everybody that. But what did we learn from this time in isolation? I was walking to a football match. I call it football, it's soccer. My apologies. That was in my village in Hastings in Westchester. Just, socially isolating, watching this game. And I got a call from the CMO of this company called Gradient Learning. We've been working for them for a few years before, and they're an educational company that really does exciting things. And the CMO, Andy Hong, asked me, have you ever designed a game before? And I said, yes. Absolutely, Andy, I have. And he said, fantastic. We've got a potential idea that we would like to talk to you about. And I said, okay. But before I get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Gradient Learning's mission. And it's there to really help students grow through building skills such as kindness, gratitude, curiosity, and resilience. And we're talking about middle school, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And you probably all know that, they don't have any of that, do they? No, they don't. And that's problematic. But it's not only that. The importance of dealing with this is exceedingly important. They also believe if you provide this, learning is increased. Knowledge is increased. And I'm going to show you a graph, a data graph, from the Financial Times. And it's data across different countries in the West and their ages of different students that focus on verbal and numerical reasoning. And look at how it drops. It's really scary where we are today with this. But also, us adults have a problem too. The performance in reasoning and problem solving, right, is declining. Why is that happening? The idea of adult numeracy, oh my goodness. Adult literacy is dropping like a tank. Right? These are massive problems that we have in society. Right? Partly because of social media, but not only that. And so we needed to focus on, with gradient learning, being responsible, social, emotional, academic, and the well-being of young people, and also potentially adults. And what Andy wanted us to do is to develop a game that helped teachers and parents and guardians not only talk to students, but allow them to open up, make them more aware, make them more articulate in regards to the things that interest them and things that they may be interested in but they never knew. And the one way we can do that is through board games, being very social, very communal construct, right? And there was an article in a really great magazine, online magazine called It's Nice That, by a journalist called Chappelle Ellison. And she said this: simply having good taste in typography and layout isn't enough to make a successful game. Cue graphic designers who are about to make a game, right? This is problematic. We have to deal with the challenges of balancing visual design and game mechanics. And this is the exciting thing, that we don't have to just be the surface. We go beyond the surface. These gentlemen here are from West Coast Games, and it's a game called Snakes of Wrath. You should get it. It's really cool. So we started thinking about this. And we had to ask ourselves, not only are we designing this game, we're ideating this game. We're really inventing this game, right? So we've got to communicate on a different level. How many people have kids here? Yeah? Or you've got like brothers and sisters that are still at home, right? And you hear this. Hi, I'm going to use my teenage son, Jakob. He's going to be really angry with me. Hi, Jakob. Hey. How was school today? It was okay. What did you do? What did you do? Oh, yeah, math. And that's all you're going to get, literally, for the rest of the night. You've been there, or you're going to go through it. We need to change that particular aspect. That's the first part of the issue in regards to communicating. And how can we gamify this? Our process in developing this game was incredibly extensive. By analyzing and comparing existing games, developing different games along the way, testing, until we had Banterful. That's the name of the game. So let me tell you quickly how it works. This is a little video that we just put together very quickly. This is Sammy, who's on my team, just going through it. It has a lot of cards. It has dice. And these cards have a lot of questions. And it's full of different surprises. So what happens is you start the game by electing a judge. To the left of you, this is my left. And over the course of the time of the game, you can actually turn over the different players so they become the judge as well. You can play this game up to 30 minutes or beyond. I played it up to an hour and a half, or even beyond. One of the things is you've got these cards, and you shuffle the decks of these cards, and then the judge picks 3 cards from the deck. As you can see, there are many question cards that you can choose from that are synonymous with one's well-being. But wait, before the judge reads out the question, you have to roll the wild die. And whatever side the die is, you select with the judge, picking whether it be twist, rule, closing, or challenge. So the surprise begins. So with twist, it could be you're playing rock, paper, scissors, or you're asked particular questions. A challenge is challenge you to, stand on one's foot and recite something that you're very much interested in or not. It could be anything. And then the rule is something that you constrain or limit yourself into the game. And so if you say that specific word, like my son likes to say, or my sons like to say basically a lot, you are challenged to that. And overarchingly, there are different points that could be built up over the course of time. At the end of the game, the winner collects a badge that they choose until next time. It sounds really easy, or you're saying, it sounds really boring as well. But let me state this. I gave an advanced copy to the head of design at Canva, Andrew Green, and he brought it back to Sydney, Australia, and he played it with his youngest child, his youngest son. And this is what he said. Such a thoughtful game. Literally just had the most insightful conversation with my youngest. It's usually grunts. Who hasn't been there before? The former head of Gradient Learning, Andy Hong, gave it to some parents to play, and this is what they had stated. The questions being neat, the answers give these particular kids a surprise, and it really is generally about discovery, something new about them. You're discovering something new about them out of their mouths. And imagine what that can do for a teacher. You're discovering what they're really interested in, or maybe even not, and they're articulate. It's exceedingly interesting. And then you can use that in buckets to make them more knowledgeable, more resilient in life. And another CMO of another educational group that we work with, Vivi, has played it with her kids, and this is what she had stated as well. So let's just take a pause for a moment. With these projects, the approach is really that we're seeking more of these types of expressive challenges, right? That allows us to be innovative, to go beyond, right? And they go hand in hand with the aspects of responsibility in today's society. It's so dynamic, it's so transformational, it's so playful. You have to bundle that up together, right? I have a specific way of thinking about this, that you want to generate an impact. So how can we as designers and creators do this and require the aspect of impact? A lot of people don't know how to understand what impact actually is. It's hard to sometimes define what it is. Some use methods such as KPIs, right? But that might not be enough, especially when it's a qualitative outcome that you're looking for. And I have a rule of thumb that I use, and it's a bit innovative, but I think it works. And it's turning the word impact into an acronym and aligning it to the content and context that you're focusing on, such as this. Using one's imagination, magic, playfulness, adventure, curiosity, and twists and turns. It sounds like Banterful. Or perhaps this. Or perhaps this. And so, let's go back to the donut. I know not everyone likes donuts here, right? But this one you might. Take a bite, or two or three. Once you do, you're going to find that it has a lot of balance. It's expressive, has an innovative flavor, has no dire additives or preservatives. Something that you can sink your teeth into. And with an aftertaste that leaves you wanting more to be responsible. Thank you.